What's up, YouTube? Why do people turn to the outside? By outside here in this video, I don't just mean going outside and touching grass as I guess you could call it a meme or idiom people throw around sometimes these days. I don't just mean that. I mean, generally, why is it that people go outside of what could be considered their normal group or their normal household, their normal nation, whatever scope you want to look at? Why do people look outside and sort of look to join or become something that they aren't born or normally into? So, this video, to start, I want to look at this kind of touch grass meme. A lot of people throw this phrase around on the internet, especially as a kind of hand wavy way to criticize people who are saying things that they don't like. So let's just say someone goes and they're researching history and they're learning about how the Enlightenment was fake and gray. When they're, I don't know, looking at some old medieval manuscripts or something, then an angry atheist or someone in reply might say to them, go outside and touch grass, or go on a hike, something like that. And the implication behind what's being said here is that somebody in looking at some top or something is losing touch with reality in some way. So the admonition to touch grass, as used as a kind of retort, would be basically go and touch baseline reality and sort of have more grounded takes. And I think, of course, there is a sense in which this is true. Like in the last video I did, I was talking about on monitoring the situation. The last video I did, I was talking about how people could get caught up in their own sort of narrative loops, or as the kids say these days, they're echo chambers, hearing only what they already think or hearing what they already want to say. So by closing themselves off, you could get stuck in a self-destructive kind of loop. So touch grass then would be the kind of return to the base case, break the loop, get out of the recursive navel gazing, for lack of a better word, and contact reality. Now, in a kind of ironic twist or turn, I think people are telling people to touch grass in the sense of telling them to not look to the outside, to not look at information that could actually be good and useful for them. And this would be like the example I gave of like atheists criticizing a religious person and telling them to touch grass. The implication here is that there's nothing in looking at these texts, looking at these books or whatever it is that the atheist character, I'm using this example, might value. So they're urging someone to basically like give up their efforts and not look to what is actually outside them at the moment. When I pick up a book that contains information or introduces me to people that I'm not already so familiar with or don't know well, in effect, that is a way of going outside. I'm going outside my own self, my own thoughts, and I'm turning and looking to somebody else to speak something to me, to give me a useful word. I'm looking for a sign. I'm monitoring the situation. I'm looking for a useful signal of some sort. All right. Cool. So in many ways, I mean, the criticism for people on the internet to go out and touch grass, it's kind of funny because, like, for example, me personally, oftentimes I'll go take a walk outside. So I'll literally be touching grass. And then at the same time, I'll be listening to some video content. So whether it's like a sort of semi-prepared talking video like the one I'm preparing for you all here now, or some more a polished presentation, whatever it is, oftentimes the internet people that say, oh, go out and touch grass, They have no idea what sort of advanced grass touching people are actually doing, whether someone's pumping away at the gym or climbing up some mountains or whatever and listening to some audio that would terrify them. There's a lot of grass touching that's going on, and so in response to the people that offer this retort to others on the internet to touch grass, my response to you is you have no idea what sort of grass touching is going on. In any case, let's continue and get into the meat of today's content. Just a brief aside, really quick. So when I'm making these videos, it's still my goal to make it acceptable as audio only content. So I'm trying to make sure to explain or say like all the things that I'm showing on my screen. And the goal is with what appears on the screen, it'll supplement or help what I'm saying. So for instance, if I used a foreign or some unknown term, then my goal is if you wanted to search that up or look at it later, I would have some kind of visual on the screen corresponding to what I'm saying, such that you could look more into some topic or some phrase or something that I say if you wanted to. So like right now, big splash up on the screen are the words touch grass. So there's like a visual cue that's going along with what I'm saying. So we're reinventing PowerPoint slides here, but I'm just making these scrollable markdown docs on a Visual Studio Code. If people do or don't like the format, feel free to leave feedback, and I'll try to adjust to meet people's needs or do what works best. All right. And then, of course, my goal continues to be to talk about relevant things, to answer questions or concerns that are important or relevant to people. I don't particularly feel a pressing need to make videos myself, but when I did go away from YouTube for a while, just in real life, there would be people who would say stuff to me like, wow, your takes are pretty interesting here. You should make a YouTube channel. And I was like, I kind of did that already. It didn't seem to gain much traction. But, if I get this feedback, people do like what's here, then yes, I'll try to offer these videos because I am more than happy to be the voice from the outside that will share or offer some words that are maybe not so commonly heard in the various echo chambers or landscapes, whatever you might call it, that we find ourselves in. All right, so let's talk about going outside. So why do people, quote unquote, go outside? Why would you look outside of your own house or your own background and look at other stuff? Like, why, if you're an American, why would you study a foreign language? Why should you care about what the French or the Chinese say? Why would you ever look outside? So I think on one level, there's not much to discuss here. Oftentimes, people go outside because they seek more of something or a different opportunity that isn't there right at home. So like the example of British selling opium that I used in my previous monitoring the situation video. It's like the British people, they want more markets to sell their illicit substances. So they might go, show up on the door, bring their ships around the world in order to look for new markets. So they're looking for more of something, which is selling opportunities, and they don't have enough selling opportunities in their own British little neighborhoods, so they're going to go outside in order to get what they don't have in-house. And of course, different opportunities. So like we'll talk about the British again. Let's just say, our food's so bland, we don't have any spices. But maybe in India or Thailand or wherever, they do have some spices that are more to their liking. So somebody might look outward to bring something in that they don't have or they're not producing on their own resources. So just one practical example that I give, Amazon. So I use Amazon for all sorts of stuff, especially buying books and things like that. And one of the reasons is because Amazon offers a better catalog than like a lot of the local stores. So I go to the outside party Amazon as opposed to my local bookseller, whoever that might be. oftentimes because Amazon has more offerings. People go to the internet generally for similar reasons. So here I have a few of these listed. For example, somebody might go on YouTube or TikTok, whatever, wherever they go on the internet, in order to look for wise counsel or guidance. Yeah, there's a lot of people more wiser than me to listen to, but maybe I express stuff in a language or in a way that offers some insight that the more conventionally and wise looking people don't offer. That's my goal here. Anyways, what else might people be looking for? Friends, business partners, a husband, a wife, expert knowledge, etc., etc. People might go to the internet, being an outside place, for many reasons to be looking for these things. So, really quick, scrolling up and returning to the touch grass discourse. One reason this is funny is you'll get these people that will say to other people on the internet, "Oh, you should go and touch grass," whereas the people that are on the internet are actually doing all the real life sort of stuff that the touch grass person might be laughing at. For example, somebody might say, "Oh, touch grass, go for a hike," and then the person they're saying that to, like maybe they set up a nice hiking date and they just met their future spouse. Like you have no idea what's going on. So that's people go on the internet for all sorts of reasons. And oftentimes, ironically, by looking at the black box right in front of you, you are ironically in a twist of forms and events. You're looking at the outside world by looking at the inside box. So kind of funny. An example of people going to the outside to seek more different opportunities. So like on this channel, I talk a lot about the Eastern Orthodoxy. It's the faith that I converted to. I was baptized into the Eastern Orthodox Church. So I came from like a non-denominational background. So this is just generic like Christian, Bible believing something very very not so well defined. And looking around me in the California place where I came from, some of these other religious groups I saw, maybe there was something about them that I found inspiring. Like I spent a bunch of time with the Koreans and the Korean Americans because I admired their intensity and their dedication to what they did. There's like a running joke that for anything you might be trying to do, there's tons of Koreans on the internet who do it better than you. So if you ever want to be demotivated from doing something like, say, playing the guitar or something, then by all means go on the internet and you can find a Korean that does it better than you. In any case, the internet was an avenue that I went and I looked for better takes because what I was hearing or what I was seeing around me wasn't really cutting it. There might be aspects of things that people were doing that I admired or that I tried to emulate or copied so that I could also have those good virtues for myself. But ultimately something was missing. So, right, people go to the outside because they often seek or looking for something that's different from what they already have around them. Or another way to put it, I wrote a line here, if the local solution ain't it, people who want things done will look outward. So for example, like with this religion question that I'm talking about, one of the sort of questions that I was, and I guess I'm still looking for the answer for, was how does one properly have and raise a family? So I'm looking for the correct software or configuration, for lack of a better term. And a lot of the kind of non-denominational or Baptist-ish or whatever that I was sort of familiar for me around me, this was not really cutting it because it seemed in these groups actually people were generally like quite miserable, neurotic, or just being kind of evil to each other. And I also really did not like the lack of free will. So that's another video for another day that we could talk about it. But in a lot of the sort of American mainstream Christianity, um, the brands that are called Calvinists, hyper Calvinists, reform that going along these lines. One of the things they do is they teach that there isn't like free will. Everything is already determined and set. So you just have to basically accept what's given to you. So not only did I find that like morally repulsive, more importantly, I myself think that that is not right. So why would you support or help the quote unquote the in group, the sort of the group that you come from, by supporting and perpetuating their teachings? If you think that they're bunk, heretical, terrible, terror bad, why would you continue to support that? So people turn to the outside when what they're born with ain't it, and crucially, and they're looking to do something better. An extreme example of this case that continues to be all around the world is, of course, the most one of the most controversial religions that are elites of this world seem to have no problem with. Oftentimes, for some strange reasons, which is the Mohammedan faith. Um, so basically, they just have to threaten their people that are in the in group to threaten them to never leave or to never look to the outside. Because if they did, then of course they're going to find lots of other things that they like better that other people offer, including most essentially, they would find truth and theology and stuff that makes sense outside of the traditions that they came from. But this is not a apologetics video in that sense. Just know, and if you yourself come from one of those groups, consider just generally this case that I'm presenting about the inside and the outside, and how people might turn towards the outside because what they have on their inside that's their default condition they lack. All right. So, right, people go to the outside because they seek more or different opportunities than what they get by default in house. And also, and this is not entirely different, but I think that it warrants another sub bullet point, is that people will turn to the outside as well when they see that the outside treats their own better than where they come from. So it's just like you go to your friend's house that has like better snacks and video games because at your house you don't have that. Maybe there's people that are watching this video that come from the other situation where they have a friend whose parents did not let them have any fun things. So then they have these people that always want to come over and hang out and even like watch them play video games because they do not have those own things in their own house. So I think oftentimes people turn outside because they see that other people do that thing better. So here on the screen, I have a kind of spicy example, a spicy social phenomenon to talk about and give a little analysis or explanation of. So let's turn to this question that I've written up here, which is, why do we see more white male Asian female couples than Asian male and white female couples? So we all know that this is kind of a phenomenon, especially in kind of Silicon Valley-ish places. A famous example being Mark Zuckerberg. And this phenomenon that we all know exists, we all see, lots of Asian nerds especially, but other people too, are very angry about it. So I wrote a little description here. It often seems that an Asian male equal or even superior on many typical marks or qualifications will be downvoted IRL in real life for factors outside of their control. While there certainly are kinds of racial hierarchies many people have, so people might prefer people of other demographics, maybe that alone isn't the reason for why this stuff happens. So a kind of thesis that I'm putting forth here, or an explanation that I'm giving, is that a lot of the times, and I'm looking at kind of Asian American males because it's like the group that I come from myself, but it's a general sort of explanation. It could be applied to other groups as well. Anyway, so my basic explanation is that this is because it starts with loving your own sorts of people. So if like a people group, they treat their own people as kind of second class citizens, then others will basically gladly agree with you, and they'll likewise treat you poorly as well. So like the example I gave with like the stereotypes for like Islamic civilizations, something like that. It's like if in these Muslim societies, for example, the men often treat their women very badly, then it'll be no surprise that a lot of them, want to run off to the West, or be with Westerners, because they can look at the outside and see how, even the outside world, which is supposed to be hostile, treats them better than the in-house treatment that they'll get by default. So with respect to Asian Americans, all the time, we have these sayings like "not a Chinaman's chance," or they're stereotypes about Asians, that, for example, they're extremely cheap and frugal and put up with terrible, bad conditions. And I'm actually reading some kind of primary source Orientalist literature on this topic right now. Another fellow, I guess, American born or raised in America, sort of dual culture, at least, person, recommended me this book, which is called Chinese Characteristics, 中国人的性格, by Arthur H. Smith. So this is like a Westerner that's living in China, and is basically describing Chinese people. Like here, I just opened the page. Chapter 7, The Talent for Misunderstanding. This remarkable gift of the Chinese people is first observed when the foreigner knows enough of the language to employ it as a vehicle of thought. To his pain and surprise, he finds that he has not understood. He therefore returns to his studies with augmented diligence. At the end of a series of years, is able to venture with confidence. Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole book here, unless people would want. If you want that as a video, maybe I could do it. The point here, though, is from the outside, you might be able to look at your own people group, your own nation, the characteristics of your own group that you belong to, and then like just ask honestly, what is it about your people group that people might like, or might not like. So one thing, like a talent, something that Asian people, or Chinese people specifically, are often very good at, is being extremely economical and frugal. So you could see how, for example, a boss or a boss of a company or someone might really like to hire people with these characteristics or abilities in order to economize and not waste the company's resources. On the other hand, if it's like your own household, and you don't buy your own children all these things that all their peers have, then naturally, if someone grows up in one of these households, then they might look to the outside and say, I don't want to be part of this family where I am forced to have less than everybody. I might instead, turn and join this group that's more generous of what they have. So going back to this point of how you treat your own, related to the question of why people might look to the outside, looking at, for example, the specific issue of like, why is a white male Asian female more common than Asian male white female? One way, we could just critically and objectively look at what are some of the reasons why this is, which people themselves might even express if you read what they have to say or listen to their videos. So I listed a bunch here, which I'll just go over really quick. So like what advantages might say like a white man have over a Chinese man. They might have, for example, or let me rephrase that: the Chinese American. Asia is a whole different category, and maybe another video if people are interested in this sort of like identity question. We could talk about it, but it's just like Africans look at African Americans as a totally different people group, and likewise in a similar way, Chinese people look at like Chinese Americans. Not to mention, like Vietnamese Americans, Laotian Americans, whatever. They look at them as a totally different groups. So two people, they might like look Chinese from the outside. The Chinese person might be the most racist person towards the Chinese American person. Okay, so with that being said, what are some like stereotypical ways, say like a white American person might have advantages over Chinese American? So, for example, they might have more legacy or connection with the past. So maybe they have small town roots that go back many generations. Maybe their family has passed down some, fancy heirloom things. They got, old black and white photographs. Who knows? There could be like a legacy thing. Somebody might have a xenophilia, so everybody, I guess, could kind of have this advantage in that if you're like foreign and exotic, people oftentimes they'll just look at the foreign exotic thing just because it's foreign exotic. Like now in the West, for example, tons of people are interested in Korean stuff, like the so-called the Korean wave, Hallyu or something in the Korean. This means right. What do people have to do with Korea? What's the connection? Basically none for most people. But this is like a popular thing that people are drawn to just simply because I think this is a characteristic people differ on to a greater or lesser extent. Some people are just drawn to foreign stuff. Right. Next, higher societal status. So I wrote a little blurb here, like Asian Americans may often fill technical or duty-laden roles, but not be given promotions or prestige. Even that is kind of looking at things in a sort of institutional, systemic, bureaucratic sort of way. You could even look at like in a group of friends or something, who naturally becomes the leader, who naturally is like the cool guy that people follow. And I would say in like a mixed race group. I'm not saying it's like never the Asian people, but I would say certain sorts of people tend to be more charismatic. And beyond like racial categories, like we all know it's actually quite a difficult and cruel world to like shorter people basically. So if you're 6'4", automatically you're going to get tons of advantages and sort of your social approach to the world that people that are shorter don't. This is in the Bible. King Saul, King David. Go read and go study about it. So we know this pattern is a deep baked in one. In any case, so higher societal status. A lot of the time, just these are the dynamics that we have to work with. Not saying they're good or bad. Not judging them. That's just how it is. And then this other point I have is somebody might be trying to escape from expectations. And this might include, so for example, if you're born in a Chinese American household, like me, myself, I'm actually going to be very inferior at being Chinese relative to like a Chinese person. So if I'm like competing with a person born in China at who could be, the better like archetypical Chinese, chances are I'm actually not going to be able to do that well because like I had to study and learn Chinese myself as a second language, whereas if someone grew up speaking and using it every day, then they're going to just have stronger skills in that. In any case, so if you're kind of born, like, so for me, right, like I cannot out Chinese a Chinese person, but if I go to like an outside, somebody from a totally different group, then we would be able to like make her own thing, basically. Or I could be a better American than a Chinese person in China. So if somebody is interested in like meeting an American, then I could be do fine at lots of American or even Chinese American things. Um, but like a lot of people, like for example, one of the reasons I studied, and I guess I still study a little bit Chinese, is because if I said I studied any other language, I mean, naturally people would say to me, "Oh, oh, why don't you learn Chinese, or why don't you speak Chinese?" So part of the reason that I started doing it is because um, then I don't have to answer that question anymore if I just do what's expected. Any case, that's kind of off topic. The point is here, yeah, escape from expectations. So somebody might go to an outside group because their own inside group has particular expectations of them that they cannot meet. So if they go to an outside group, then suddenly they could be honored for their good or their strong traits, and then what might have been a detriment to them doesn't matter. So I'll just give like one other example of this would be kind of education or degree attainment. So certain families, people groups, they'll care more about degrees and stuff like that than others. Let's say you don't have a degree. Well, you might have advantages associating with a group that doesn't care about degrees. Whereas if you do have a degree, for example, but your group doesn't care about it, then maybe you'll go and you'll associate it with groups that do care. So, like for example, I've heard this from African American friends where maybe they have a degree, they have some credentials in quote unquote white society that their neighborhood family group doesn't care about. They might associate more with the mixed race group, hang out with the Asians or the white people or whatever, because to these people, then their degree signifies or means something that their own in quote unquote in group that they're born into doesn't care about. And finally, as a last reason, why might Asian Americans like me be lame and uncool? Uh, to the white females or whatever. Another reason might be like fun and excitement. So um, Asian cultures may favor risk averse but prudent, frugal resource management, which might not be as fun and interesting. So I think too, like this, I'm not saying it's a good or bad characteristic, just one reason why somebody might go from the inside group and turn to the outside group. I'll give a concrete and also rather controversial example of this. Like I grew up always hearing tattoos are bad, and honestly, like I myself, I don't have any tattoos, and I've never really wanted one. I always like think it's kind of like, oh, it'll cheapen me. I don't want to mark myself up with tattoos, but a lot of people, they do like tattoos, they do get them, they're fine with them. So obviously, if you were in a household, you really want tattoos, and then your household just completely hates on tattoos all the time, and especially if you rebelled and actually got some, you don't want to like sit around and be eternally hated on and judged by your own group. So you might seek to link and join yourself with somebody from the outside group where the tattoo might be something positive, like it's a interesting story or a way in which you distinguish yourself, or a mutual connection. Maybe two people meet at a tattoo parlor or whatever. Who knows? So someone like me, for instance, I don't do tattoos whatsoever. There's a lot of Asian Americans or Asians that are similar way, but somebody might turn to the outside because they're restrained in a way that they think is unjust or unfair or just plain uncool or something. All right. So oftentimes, just going back to the Asian American example, like Asian Americans might look at themselves on the so called like 666 matrix. They got their six pack, their six figures, and they're 6 feet tall. So in many ways, they're equal or even superior to those they regard as competitors So this specific example, could be looking at the dating market or relationships, whatever you want to call it. But what over focusing on stuff like this 666 matrix does is because the person doesn't realize um, that basically they're treating themselves and other people in this very sort of objective way, whereas the real way in which people are often able to connect and want to work together to form households and stuff like that is because within the household there is the essential ingredient of love. So how do you treat your own? Oftentimes in various different forms and ways, if somebody is unable to find proper love within their own environment or household, then instinctively they'll look outward in order to find what's missing if they're the sort of person that does go out and sort of look for that. So I've spelled out this with some concrete examples and some pretty explicit terms, but I think that oftentimes for people, this sort of action uh, could be subconscious or implicit. They won't explicitly be able to be explaining why they're doing what they're doing, but one of the reasons they are is because, for example, they're looking for something that they're lacking themselves. So, like, I'll psychologize myself, for example. One of the reasons I've always been interested in studying things like foreign languages and stuff, for example, is because I believe, generally speaking, in my own kind of upbringing, the own place I came from, it was ratherly linguistically impoverished. I wasn't able to use language in fun and interesting ways, whereas on the internet or whatever, turning to the outside, then suddenly I see that this need is met. There's plenty of interesting people to talk to, interesting conversations to be had, and so on and so forth. But growing up, not being like on the internet or whatever so much, growing up in a more, now I'm like aging myself, but growing up more in the pre cell phone era or whatever, then naturally, foreign languages, foreign cultures, or something, these would interest me because it was a way to say, oh, maybe what I have in my own world, which I'm unsatisfied with, maybe there's other groups that do it better. So studying foreign languages could be like a concrete way in which I could invest or put myself out to study and look at the outside world, albeit through a very difficult, time-consuming, technical way. Cool. So let's talk about another example that's perhaps even more general than the sort of partner selection, dating, etc. question, which is why do people eat out? So when you eat out, literally in the phrase eating out, what you're doing is you're going to the outside to have food and maybe even a place to sit down as opposed to going to your own house. Asians, are infamous or famous for loving food in restaurants. A lot of, foodie groups, people sending each other pictures of food, taking pictures of the food before they eat. So what's this all about? Why do people like to eat out versus in? So everybody could ask this question for their own household, for their own self, for their own, little groups. Why would, there's food at home. Why would you rather go outside to eat? So I gave a handful of examples here, but I'm sure you all could think of more. So number one, like your house is messy, but the restaurant is relatively clean. I think this, for example, this is a reason why a lot of people will choose to go to Starbucks or a cafe or somewhere else instead of trying to study in their own home. In their own home might be disaster zone, so they can't focus. They're distracted by all these things. Then they go to Starbucks or something. At least there, it's their job for them to, wipe down the tables and keep stuff clear. So that's why a lot of the times you go to a coffee shop these days, depending what neighborhood you're in, you might see like all these nerds like set up with their work from home laptops, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes, I would guess that the reason for that is because their home situation is a disaster. So actually, if they go to the neutral sort of the outside default, market price solution, they actually get something better than their home environment for them to work in. Okay, another reason, maybe your food tastes bad, but the restaurant's food tastes good. So this might be a reason why somebody would go to a restaurant versus their own house. This particular problem, oftentimes this one could be solved through education. So you could ask your question like, "Oh, I always order from this Mexican restaurant. Why can't we make tacos at home?" And you could ask yourself, and go on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, do your research, and find out like why is it that their food tastes better. But a lot of the times, right, we don't have the time or the energy, the resources, et cetera, to do that. And, so we'll go out in order to get different tastes. And I'm by no means saying that that's a bad or not something to do. Rather, here, as I said, we're just looking at reasons. Why is it that someone might choose to eat out, to go to the outside versus just staying inside? And then this last one, I'm kind of making fun of myself and continuing on the Asian American theme. But it's you were too cheap to turn on the air conditioner, but the restaurant will. So, I mean, if you actually ran the numbers, you might find out like it's cheaper for me to go to Starbucks and leech off their air conditioner than for me to actually turn on my own air conditioner in my own place. So, someone would buy, let's say a three. Well, now Starbucks is not going to be $3. Let's say you're going to buy an $8 latte at Starbucks and hang out there for 10 hours instead of say spending $15 to power the whatever it takes in your own place. So of course that's a very specific contrived example, but ultimately it could be that the reason somebody finds like Starbucks or somewhere a restaurant so much more comfortable than their own house is just because the restaurant included as part of the experience pays certain expenses to make things nice in a particular way that you in your own house are not willing to do. So it's not even that the food tastes better or whatever. It's just that the eating out they make the environment nicer in ways that you aren't willing to do. And then I don't write it here, but then of course another thing to add would be basically if the company or the environment, et cetera, is just better there than at your own home. So this would be like reasons why. Why would somebody, I don't know, go and hang out at the bar with their friends all the time instead of being at home? Well, maybe because their wife yells at them all the time and doesn't appreciate them. So in order to run away from that and forget their problems, then they go to the bar and they drink. Or the gender thing could go the other way. Like maybe the wife always hangs out with their friends and likes to do lunch dining club because I don't know, the husband at home always complains about his work problems and stuff and has a bad vibe, whereas like her friends talk about stuff that's more interesting to her. Whatever it might be, somebody might choose to eat out for like personal or company, the people you're associating with reasons, not necessarily like food, environment, stuff like that. Though those might also play a role. Okay, so we've talked about why people go to the outside in many ways, including social media, the internet. Um, am I just complaining? Am I just ranting? What's the reason behind doing all this? I think generally, I would say, myself included, but everybody, we could all do a better job building up our own homes and nations. And this, I think, if we're wondering, like, why is it that we become poor? Why is it that, we lose our own people? Like, I'm doing a project now, for instance, I'm looking at a lot of data related to churches or parishes. And one question, people have at like a church or parish is, of course, they want their people to keep on going there. They want people to be happy. They want to serve their needs or their communities. But you go to any church, there's going to be a lot of people that are leaving. So you could ask the question, why is it that people leave instead of coming and continuing to come to this house and build and grow this house? Why are people going to the outside? And generally, we could look at that as a question for our own, whether it's our business, interpersonal relationships, et cetera, et cetera. You could ask and approach these questions in a similar way. So, right. I think so. Oftentimes we do go outside, but it's also our day to day thing that we do is we're building up the house. We're building up the inside. So maybe this is a nice Chinese characteristic advantage or something that maybe I'm offering to other groups I'm part of. For example, I cited like the Orthodox Church. Um, One thing we could do is that we could not pay more than is what is needed to the outside and instead pay inside more. So like the example I gave with eating out and eating in your house, why do people say, "Oh, don't eat out so much, eat at your own house?" It's because what you control ultimately, not only could you get a better like price or deal for it, but you can meet your own needs better than an unknown third party. The best friend to you could be, your own close circle of people that know you the best already. If people are having to go and turn to the outside for a lot of things, in many ways, this is an indication that the house's internal matters are very out of order. You have to go to the outside a lot of the time because you're failing on internal matters. So what you could do to improve the situation, and everybody's situation will be different, but what you need to do is to build up your own house and your own nation. So here, I have this post here that I was going to make on the Elon app, but for some reason it got banned. But I'll just read and go over what I wrote here and conclude with this. So I wrote, don't pay more than needed to the outside. This includes giving your work or labor to bad arrangements. People will do slave labor for pennies, often be fired or laid off at the drop of a dime, while withholding wages from their own, so not supporting or compensating for efforts that other people give to them. So an example of how this sort of thing uh, might be happening would be, for example, like with the eating out example. Instead of investing and encouraging their own sort of in-house people to have the resource, the occasion, the motivation in order to make like delicious, healthy, good food in-house, people are quick to just outsource and get rid of it. So what you have is like over time, a lot of households basically they're just forgetting how to do food and like other things that might be considered very basic over the time because people instead of helping and supporting their own are bleeding out. And for like adults to children, for instance, the children aren't going to learn how to cook if you never like cook with them and show them. This is one thing that was kind of funny or shocking that I learned at university. I would meet some people, especially from Asia, that would come from like wealthier families, and they wouldn't know. Like I met one person, for instance. She claimed that she didn't know how to wash dishes um, because she would just always use like plastic plates or paper plates or whatever. I mean, so I don't know how fringe or weird that is, but this is like you come from a place or a background where you're not being given or trained with the opportunities for how to build up the in-house because I don't know, you're supposed to be a specialist. You're supposed to just get hired at a mega company and make money, and that's your only job. What happens when people try to over specialize or over set themselves up only to serve the outside is that they don't know how to build up or how to support the inside. And lo and behold, people get older, they try to form their own groups, their organizations, or whatever. Then they're, bleeding out mega money to all these outside parties because they don't know how to do stuff from the inside. Cool. All right, and then the next line I wrote is, when we learn to treat our own better than companies treat their employees, then maybe society will get better. Be better than, and this is probably why I got banned, but negative stereotypes, whether it's for Chinese people or Indian people or whatever, is like one negative stereotype is that they'll work for like these super low wages and accept just terrible treatment. And so if that becomes a societal at a large pattern, then you have a whole society that's built on people just trying to dehumanize and extract value and resources from each other, which is no good, no fun. In contrast, what we could do, so the people that care to try to look at their lives, try to do better, is look at how you could build up your own house and nation, which will include looking for ways in which you could pay your own house to build up, not just like paying for that one catering event, but you want to pay for the ability to produce food. You want to not just buy a man a fish, you want to train the man to be a fisherman, etc., etc. So what we're doing here, right, like building up your house or nation, it's not just giving people stuff, but it's choosing people, or not choosing, training people, building people up, and how they could become the useful force that becomes, the outside house that you pay. You want to become the outside house that's desired to provide goods, services, people, whatever it is. And as a concluding note, I'll wrap this up where I think this whole topic is related to the Christian or biblical idea of hospitality. At the end of the day, what is hospitality about? It's about visitors going to a house and the house like offering. So life is about a lot of both being the visiting house as well as being the hosting house. Different people differ in which role they play more, but to a certain extent, we all do our share of hosting as well as our share of visiting. And I think that oftentimes, very abstractly, but the way that we build ourselves up is to try to become the best sort of hosting house, nation, etc. that we can be, which oftentimes I think will involve, instead of trying to extract or take things from the outside, we look for our own inside. What is it that we're missing? What is it that we're lacking? And then putting in the work, the effort, whatever it takes in order to build up, to have something to give. You can't give what you don't have. So what we're lawfully able to do, what every religion, will consider moral or fine, is to build yourself up, not so you're strong so you could take from other people unjustly, but instead so that you could give. And I think, too, that's one of the reasons why the Christian faith is so radical, because it's saying, it's better to give than to receive, to be the house that's able to provide, which is a kind of self-emptying, a kind of becoming the servant of all. Then that's the most attractive civilization. That's the most attractive house or nation that you want to belong to. All right, this video is getting pretty long, almost at an hour. So I'll wrap it up for now. Please like, subscribe, leave comments, etc., etc. And I'll try to address what you all are interested in. Thank you very much.